and you're just not going to be able to do this. Let's stop and let's eat. And then let's come back to it when we're done.
Yeah.
All right, we are back
One more
with another
time.
episode of Homeschool Hypothesis.
Yep.
And today we're going to talk about...
How long should you do school?
Yes.
Daily and,
Per
seasonally.
subject. So that's another question that I get from people a lot. They, in their mind, school at home looks like school in the classroom.
Like 8 hours of sitting.
Yeah, and...
No, that's not it.
School does not have to look like sitting down at 8 and working until 3.
No, and
At all. It shouldn't look that long.
No, it shouldn't be like that in your house, because your house is your home, and it should be...
It should be comfortable.
It should be comfortable.
So how long do you, just on school together, how long does a typical day look like at your house? Understanding that typical really means nothing, but in your dream life.
So I've said in previous videos, this lockdown has actually helped me, like, schedule-wise a lot, because I'm like, I can't go to the park, and I can't go there. Outside temptations are not available.
Yep.
With my 3 boys, we don't do much. We do like a couple hours a day tops, and especially in the summer. I'm just doing it because if I don't do it, I will lose it, and it'll take me like 3 months to get something back up.
I do school during the summer because I like the routine.
Yeah.
But we do like a very loose version of school, but it just keeps my kids in the routine, because kids, as soon as they go off their routine, they're like, they're intense.
Yeah.
Anyways, regular public school was built to accommodate 20 or more kids in a classroom. And when you're working with multiple kids, it takes longer to get them through the same thing.
It takes time to get, the majority of them.
Right. I mean, and you always
on
have
the
kids
same
that work
level.
faster and kids that work slower, but you're having to give directions, and if you have a young class, you're having to give directions like 17 times
and again.
to each student, which that's not going to change when you're at home, but 17 times to one student goes a lot faster than 17 times to 32 students.
Yeah. So, I have the 3 boys, and it just doesn't take as long
so
to get them through their work, because there are only 2 of them.
A little bit older kids than yours. Some of mine, I have younger ones as well too, but we kind of do block scheduling. When I first started homeschooling, I had this beautiful idea of what you'd see in your classroom back in public school.
I love the starry-eyed ideas.
We'd start school at 9 to 10 would be language arts, and 10 to 11 would be math, and then we'd have a delightful lunch where nobody bickered and everyone ate all their food. And
how'd that work out?
Well, it didn't so much, which isn't meant to scare you away, but to remind you that homeschooling doesn't have to and shouldn't look like public school.
It's a whole nother animal.
We changed that method because the problem that I found is, okay, we had this hour for language arts. Well, I had one person sitting there doing nothing while I was working with someone else on language arts, because that was our hour to do it. And it wasn't really an efficient use of time. And then while someone was sitting there waiting, they'd start playing or doing something, and then it was really hard to bring them back to what we were supposed to be working on. So like I said, we started doing a block schedule. So the morning time, after we get everybody up and eaten, the morning time is when we work on our individual stuff. And by individual, what I mean is we don't do it together as a family.
Yeah.
So, but they may do individual things with me. So it's when we work on our math, our language arts, our spelling, our reading, our typing, anything that falls in that category. And you may or may not do all of those things.
Right.
You don't need to do all of those things. We do, most of my kids do all of those things, but they don't all. My oldest doesn't have set aside typing time because she spends a lot of time typing papers and stuff on her computer. She doesn't need to do a typing class. But my 7-year-old, she's 8 now, my 8-year-old, she does have 10 minutes that she spends on typing every day, because computers are a part of our life.
Computers,
so
you have to learn how to type now to be efficient.
That I have required of her, but your requirements may look different.
So in your block schedule, do your kids just say, can they call on you, Mom, I need some help here? Otherwise, they're doing it by themselves?
Yep, so it's where they work individually. My younger 2, I still do my youngest school-age one, I still do all of her language arts with her. My middle school-aged one, it's about half and half. I do about half of her language arts with her, and half she does on her own. And that's not because it's my preference, that's just what the curriculum calls for. My oldest does language arts entirely on her own. And so I will sit down and I'll say, okay, who wants to work with mom first? Someone will come over and I'll do language arts with them. And we'll go through all of that while other people are working on, their math or whatever. And if they have a problem with math, they'll say, Mom, I need help. And if I'm able to help them right then I get up and help them. If not, I'll say, okay, we'll go work on reading for a minute. I'm doing this right now and I'll come help you with your math in a minute. So that's how I've set aside my time in the morning, and I just kind of float around between my kids, helping them as they need help, and then working on those things that we do together, but are individual subjects for each of them. And then we have lunch.
It sounds like a good system.
It is.
Yeah.
So, this is where we sometimes get lost. They finish at different times, and then they go scatter and play. But lunch usually brings us back together.
Food always does.
And so that's why after they finish is free time until lunch. We eat together, and then we do our together stuff after lunch. And we do history together. We all learn together, but they have different assignments. And we do science together. And again, we all learn together, but they have different assignments.
Different based on their...
Yeah. And so we gather after lunch, and that's where we do our together stuff. And then when we're done, we're done. And so usually we're done between 1 and 2. I have a couple who sometimes are really slow, so sometimes it takes a little bit longer. But generally we're done between 1 and 2. And if someone hasn't finished their individual stuff from the morning, that's when we go back and work on it.
Work on that.
But that leads me into another topic, which is how long do you make your kids work on one topic? Like, do you tell your kids, okay, you have to do an hour of language arts, you have to do an hour of math,
or 3 pages in the workbook kind of thing.
So how do you work that?
I don't. We're not doing any workbooks at the moment.
Well, that's true. You do Life of Fred, which is more of a story for me.
Yeah, we do Life of Fred, which is more of a story. And we'll just work the problems on a piece of paper. We'll just do a chapter at least.
Okay.
And it's all still very sit down family environment. They don't have any individual stuff to do at the moment. If we're all doing our family stuff together, I'll gauge. Like, can I read another, section on this? I'm looking. It's usually my youngest who is completely done. So I just kind of base it off of what I see during that day. Sometimes we'll do like 2 chapters of history if they're getting into it. And other times I'm like, okay, let's work on PE today for the most part, and let's play Flies Up and.
Yeah. And the great thing with littler kids is so much learning is done through play and exploration and that anyways, that it's okay. Like, you don't consider it lost time.
I mean...
You still need to do the stuff that you need to do, but it's okay to spend a day going outside and playing and launching water balloons because they don't understand what's happening, but you're launching water balloons and they're seeing and understanding how energy transfers from one item to another. You have the potential energy when you pull it back. And then you've got the kinetic energy as it's moving.
Energy.
And
they have to gauge, like, oh, that one went too far. I have to pull it not quite so far back. And that being said, so for me, I just gauge how they're feeling, and I take a look at the clock too, because I'm like, there are certain times when, it's snack time.
Yeah.
And that brings them all together. I'm like, okay, you have your recess. Take 10 minutes. Because that's when I felt like I've lost them. All right, okay, we need a break, 10 minutes, and while they're doing their thing, I'm, making the snack. And then I'll say, hey, I made this beautiful snack for you. And they all gather in, and I'm like, I got you. Again,
let me talk to you about. But
I look at the
rule
clock
of
and
thumb
gauge.
for you is kind of looking at the clock, using their cues, trying to get them when they're together, and then reading. If they're saying I'm done, then that's your cutoff. Okay.
Yeah. So I structure the time, not necessarily the content. Learning, I have this chunk of time for learning.
Yeah.
So whatever we want to learn, we're going to learn it in this time, and then, lunch happens, and then we're off doing other things.
Yeah, till snack time brings you together again.
Till snack time, till food brings us back together again.
But like I said, you can get so much more done working at home in such a smaller amount of time. So get out of the mindset of school has to be from 8 to 3 or 9 to 4 or whatever your school hours are. It doesn't.
Yes. Don't torture yourself like that.
We do something similar-ish. So first I was sharing with you earlier, I had read that kids can focus on a subject
Mm-hmm.
for their age plus 1 in minutes.
Yes.
So if you have a 6-year-old, they can focus for about 7 minutes before they're lost. And as they get into the middle school, high school years, that kind of goes out the window,
increases.
and they can focus much longer.
Focus much longer.
My 13-year-old can certainly focus for more than 14 minutes. But especially younger elementary school kids, preschool up through, I'd say, maybe even 6th grade, especially for boys.
Especially for boys, I'd say 7th grade. Like, I'm looking at my kids right now, I'm like, I don't think you're ever going to change. It's like, once you change.
So as you're planning out your day, and certainly take all this not with a grain of salt, but take it as suggestions, and then find what works for your family.
Suggestions, and you have to find out what works for your family, because if I took on your schedule, that would not work for my sons.
Right.
And your girls, if they took on my schedule, they'd probably be bored. They'd probably be bored because I wasn't doing enough.
Right.
But with my boys, it is enough.
So use your kids' cues as part of the lead for you. But don't set yourself up to fail. We have a 4-week-old puppy. We have a 4-month-old puppy. And we've been watching these training videos, and he says all the time, don't set yourself up to fail when he's talking about training different behaviors and obedience things with it. Don't set yourself up to fail as you start homeschooling. I am a planner. I love to plan, but I rapidly found out that I couldn't say we're doing this lesson this day and this lesson this day and this lesson this day, because in my reality it didn't work. In yours it might.
Yeah.
In mine it didn't work. But I found it so much more helpful to say language arts, for example. My kindergartner, when she was in kindergarten, she's in 2nd grade now, we would work on language arts for 15 minutes because I knew that was about how long she could go. And I would read her. If she was into it and we could go a little bit longer, I'd stretch it out. If she was hitting a wall before then, we'd cut it off early. And wherever we were done, I would just put a mark on the page, and that's where we would come back to the next day. It didn't matter that we hadn't finished our lesson because we'd finish it the next day and we'd put in the work. But if your kids reach, so we're religious, we're very religious, and we do Bible reading every night as a family. And so some of you may be able to relate to this. As we're doing Bible study, we all read together. We read a couple of verses, and then my husband sort of talks about what we've read and summarizes it and dives into it a little bit. And sometimes I'll have to tap him on the shoulder because I look at the kids and they're all like that, glazed over. and I have to remind him, you've lost them. And not because he's not being entertaining or interesting. The older kids are like, wow, that's so great. But the younger ones are, because they can't focus on stuff for that long. And if they've reached a point where they can't focus anymore, it doesn't matter what you're teaching them. It's just going to go right over their heads. So if it's something that you feel strongly that you still need to finish that day, take a break from it and come back. But as long as you're consistently learning, it's okay to say, okay, we've got through our 15 minutes for today.
Forward
That's
motion.
where we are, and let's finish it tomorrow. Math, the same way. I've watched my kids long enough now that I'm able to kind of put time limits because I know how long they can go. So with the math my kids have right now, the lessons are all different lengths. We 2 of them are using Beast Academy right now.
Yeah.
And so for math, they do 20 minutes a day. And sometimes they'll get super into it and they'll go for an hour, but 20 minutes is the minimum that I require, and both of them are at an age where they can do 20 minutes of math. Language arts, usually our goal is a lesson, but depending on how your lessons are laid out, as soon as we hit that wall, then we just say, okay. As they get older, I do expect it. And I'm one of those people who, I don't want my kids to say, oh, that's too hard. And I'm like, oh, okay, let's not do it then.
There's such a fine line between, okay, you need a break, or I need to push you to do this because that's what you need.
And that's a hard balance, and you'll have to, and there's not a exact line for that. It's going to be different for every child, let alone every family. So find that line between your kids where you're encouraging and pushing them to do more than what they thought they could do, but you're not setting them up to fail, and you're not pushing them so far that they are getting frustrated, because as soon as they get frustrated, their ability to learn just shuts right down.
Yep. And that puts strain on your relationship.
Yeah. And remind them as they're having struggles learning. My oldest, I joke sometimes that I should tattoo this on my face. She'll get really frustrated because she's not understanding something right away out of the box, and I have to tell her, if you already knew how to do it, there would be no point in learning it. And so your kids are going to have some concepts that they pick up really quickly and it'll be easy for them, and they're going to have other concepts that they're going to start and they're going to be hard, and it's going to take a while to click.
Struggle.
And just, break it down. Look for different ways to tackle it. Look for different resources to teach it. Look for videos that can help. But watch those cues. We've sort of we've gone on a tangent from
we homeschool our kids.
School.
Tangented.
But watch those cues and don't. Another friend of mine from our core 5, she was telling me that a friend of hers told her, whatever you're going to ask your kids to do, try it yourself for like a week beforehand and see if you can do it. Because,
that's good.
even adults, if you've worked during any phase of your adult life, there's no chance that you sat down in your cubicle or your office or whatever from 8 to 3 without moving.
Yeah.
You got up and you went to the water cooler. The drinking
I'm sure they have water coolers
cooler.
there.
You got up and got a coffee. You went to lunch. You just walked around and talked to people. There's no way you sat there as an adult, even who has a little bit more self-control. There's no way you sat there for 6 straight hours, let alone you probably didn't go past an hour or 2 unless you're really focused on something as an adult. So learn to read your kids and find those
sweet spots.
Those sweet spots, yeah. And they'll grow as your kids get older. And as they get older, if you can teach them when they're young to learn to love learning,
yes,
then as they get older, it's not even a fight to get them to sit down. Every once in a while you might have a topic that they need to learn that they don't care about that much, and that might be a little bit more of a fight. But they will sit down and spend hours working on something because they just want to learn all about it.
Yeah.
And
I mean, that's what happened with your oldest.
Yeah.
I mean, a few weeks ago, you were asking me, I follow the Thomas Jefferson education.
Yeah.
It's not really a philosophy, but I'll call it a philosophy.
Movement.
Yes. Leadership education. And you were asking me about it because you had some questions, and so I explained what it does, and all it was what you have done exactly with your daughter. So you were doing leadership education without knowing it, and it was just activating a love of learning, and that means not like forcing it onto your kid, but pushing, but exposing them to all these
motivating and getting that. I think it's okay to motivate your kids and to help them do things that they think are hard, because when they accomplish it, they're so excited about what they were able to do. And as parents, sometimes we can see what they can accomplish before they can.
Yeah.
A lot of times.
That can get us into trouble sometimes.
Yeah. But when they hit that moment where they do it, then it's such a boost for their self-confidence, and it just really builds them up.
Yeah. So, and now your oldest daughter is spending hours and hours of independent study just on her own because she likes it.
Yeah. Right now she's actually going through a Dave Ramsey course that...
We love Dave Ramsey.
We do like Dave Ramsey, but that was what she has for math for the summer, because I make my kids do a little bit of school, like I mentioned. And she's just super enjoying it. It's about personal finance, I believe.
Yeah.
And she'll just be bored, and she'll be like, "Mom, is it okay if I work on math? It's not math day." And I'm like, "Yes, go for it."
Oh, no, sweetie. You can't do that.
She'll come to me and tell me the cool things she learned. "Mom, I learned about loans today. Let me tell you what I learned." And that's where you want to get your kids to. And so certainly teach them. They do need to know things when they're young, but get them to a point where they enjoy learning, where it's fun. And as they get older, they will seek out. Even my 4th grader, she loves history and she loves animals. And we'll go to the library and she'll just get dozens of books on animals and read them. She has
actually read them, because you know how you go to the library and you buy you get all of these books, and then they sit there for 2 weeks.
Yeah, no, she reads them. And we have this really thick book that I was trying to find that we actually got from you on horses. It's probably this thick, and it's huge. Like, I think it's bigger than an 8.5 by 11.
It's a big one. It's a
and
big
she's
hardcover.
read that thing cover to cover like 3 times. And she can tell you any fact about horses that you can learn from a book. She does have some hands-on experience too, but she and she just soaks it up. Now, she does love to read, so that's not something all children would do. But find those sweet spots, find those limits that your kids can do. They'll grow as they get older, but set them up to succeed and help them learn to love learning from whatever point you're starting. If they've had a hard time with school, be patient with them. Be patient with yourself.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
be a support. Be a support for them. Don't, even as adults, you know how as soon as someone gets confrontational, the other person gets defensive, and then nothing's accomplished.
Oh yeah, nothing happens.
It's the same thing with your kids. As soon as school turns into a fight, nothing is going to happen.
Yeah, you just
but that's again one of those places where you find the line, and you can't say, "Oh, you don't want to do school today? Let's just not do it.
Go and play on your Xbox."
But sometimes it's okay to say, "Oh, I can tell it's close to lunchtime, and you are really hungry, and you're just not going to be able to do this. Let's stop, and let's eat." And then let's come back to it when we're done.
Yeah, just
it's okay. It's okay to do that. That's not letting them win. That's helping them to be able to succeed by providing them the tools that they need to succeed.
Well, and that's also giving them an indicator. Oh, you know, I am really hungry. Actually, now you think about it. So
and helping them recognize.
Helping them recognize, you know, how to take care of themselves too.
Yeah. Which is another great thing you get to do with homeschooling. So, anyways, we will see you next time.
Okay. Yeah.